Yeah. This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming. This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. For some reason, my browser says it didn't want to play our intro, Jack. So we're going on. This is the Mac and Jack Sports Show, Friday edition. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, as we're going to delve into the sports, kind of catch you up on the big stories and things that happened very recently. Good morning, Jack. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, Mac. When we got muted in the beginning of the show, you served in the military, didn't you?
Yes.
Did you ever have a sergeant who said, "I can't hear you"? That's
Yes.
what I should be saying at the beginning of the show when we're mute and we have technical difficulties.
Okay. All right. You could do that if you want. So, Jack, yesterday was a Hall of Fame game, of course, in Canton, Ohio. That's where the Hall of Fame is. They had some inductees yesterday, some that I agreed with, some that I don't know. So I want to go through some of these names with you and tell me what you think. So, first one, Rondé Barber. Is he deserving to get in the Hall of Fame?
Just one quick comment. The Jets played the Cleveland Browns in the Hall of Fame game, and there was a certain amount of interest in that game. I mean, only because of the Aaron Rodgers fact that he didn't play at all. So it should put exhibition games in perspective. They're only really important for the coaches, to make final evaluations. They know who their starters are going to be for the most part. So they might want to fine-tune them a little later on, and they're scared of the injury factor. And before I answer the question about the Hall of Fame, players, and we're going to get into that heavily, I just want to say I think coaches should play their players in the beginning of the exhibition season, Mac, their starters, because if they are going to get hurt, that's when you want them to get hurt. If they have to miss a few weeks, they could be ready for the beginning of the season or close to it. Okay, but they save them for the very end, kind of fine tune them. But it's all a philosophy. Rondé Barber, does he belong in the Hall of Fame or not? Yeah, I would say the answer is yes. He was a big part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense. When Coach Dungy came over there to coach the Buccaneers over there, certain players weren't playing as much as they should have. Players like John Lynch, and maybe Rondé Barber. And Rondé Barber took off. He was a mainstay of that Buccaneer defense, an outstanding player. It would always seem that he'd be around the ball.
Yeah, Rondé Barber, I agree with you, deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He said the thing that turned his career around was the coach. It's now the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers was the defensive backfield coach, right? And he said once Tomlin got there, he became a great player. So I agree with you. I go with Rondé Barber. I think he should be in.
And Mac, just a shout out for all the great head coaches who are also great assistant coaches. We don't allow that to become part of their legacy. It's like we nearly forget. I mean, The greatest coaches in NFL history were assistant coaches. Bill Belichick, defensive coordinator, 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. Vince Lombardi, Tom Landry, assistant coaches with the Giants. Mike Tomlin, it's completely forgotten the time he spent as an assistant coach. We just think of him during his years as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the guy he took over for, Bill Cowher, was an assistant coach there with the Cleveland Browns.
Right. 100% right. Dicka with the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, we do forget. We do forget that. The only coach that made it, there was a couple there. I know that Tom Coughlin was up. Don Coryell gets in the Hall of Fame. He never won a Super Bowl, Jack. I mean, Air Coryell was huge with Dan Fouts and some of the great wide receivers San Diego had. Do you think Don Coryell is a Hall of Fame coach?
That's a good question. Based strictly on accomplishment, the answer would maybe be no. based on impact, the answer would be yes, because he was an innovator. You can argue that he changed the game a little at the time, where we were used to a running game, pound the ball on the ground. And he was maybe the first coach who would really open things up wide open in the NFL. I mean, he would seem to disregard the running game at times, for the passing game. And look at what the league is today, Mac. It's essentially a passing game. And if you're going to tell me it's a running game, my evidence is going to be, well, what are the running backs getting paid? That's an acknowledgement by the league, what was negotiated, the coaches, their strategy, what running backs are getting paid, that it is a passing game. So he was an innovator. He was kind of a little bit ahead of his time. So I'd say, yeah, he's deserving of it.
Okay, I think he's borderline. I think he could get in, may not get in. Coughlin definitely had if you want to talk about accomplishments, winning 2 Super Bowls, I would have gone.
Are we on Coughlin right now?
Huh?
Are we on Tom Coughlin talking about him right now?
Yes.
Because I just want to point out, it's such a thin line between getting in the Hall of Fame and not getting in the Hall of Fame. Now, you're going to point out the Giants won 2 Super Bowls and Tom Coughlin is the head coach. That's his ticket into the Hall of Fame, because he had a body of work besides that with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then he was at Boston College. He was an assistant with the Giants. He's had a career that's worthy of it. But let me throw this to you, Mac. During his 2 Super Bowls with the Giants, the 2 games that they won to go to the Super Bowl, they won in overtime against the Packers one year and an overtime against the 49ers the other year. In other words, they could have easily lost both those games just as easy as they won them. Let's say they lost both games and the Giants never got to a Super Bowl under Tom Coughlin. I don't think we're talking about him in the Hall of Fame.
I'd agree.
So that shows you what a thin line it is.
Right. I agree with that. Linebacker from Dallas Cowboys, Chuck Howley. There's a lot of Cowboys from that era in there. Chuck Howley was a very good linebacker. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer or not, Jack.
I think he's a Hall of Fame. I teased Jim Jeffcoat about it when you gave him a question, asking him to name the 5 greatest Dallas Cowboys in history. And I went, well, what about Chuck Howley? He wasn't on Jim's list. I think Chuck Howley's worthy. He was a mainstay of that defense. He was. Yeah, he wasn't the big name on that defense compared to Bob Lilly, but he was such a key factor on that defense.
Okay. The Jets, Joe Klecko, Jack. To me, very interesting.
Yeah, I'm partial to Joe Klecko. I think he belongs in there. Klecko is a fan favorite as well. I mean, sometimes you have to look at the players who they played with. Did it make a pass rusher's job easier? He had Mark Gastineau, Marty Lyons, Abdul Salam. He had guys there who would complement them perfectly, with the sack exchange. But he was a force himself. I mean, he's worthy of being a Hall of Famer.
The only problem I got with Klecko is his time there. If I remember correctly, he didn't play in the NFL for a long time. If I remember correctly, Jack. So
that was a controversy surrounding a past inductee, Tony Basile of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Great offensive lineman. They questioned whether he had the body of work.
Right.
I mean, but he had a couple of legendary games, especially one against Bruce Smith, where he completely dominated Bruce Smith one game, and Bruce Smith is an all-time great. But sometimes we talk peak value, sometimes we talk longevity. It's what you like. Someone could have a long career and be very good over a long period of time. Or someone could have a much shorter career and be great over a short period of time. It's all what you like in a way.
Yeah, and Klecko did dominate when he played the game. He did dominate the other offensive line.
He was a great player.
No brainer to me. Darrelle Revis, Jack. There's no doubt he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Darrell Revis should definitely be in. I mean, it's ironic. He's going in as a New York Jet. His legacies as a New York Jet, even though he did play with a few other teams. He played with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had a cup of coffee basically with the Kansas City Chiefs. And the 1 year he was with the New England Patriots, it's ironic, they won a Super Bowl.
Right.
So if you're Darrell Revis and they're having a reunion of that Patriot team, it might feel a little awkward. You show up back there, you're only with him 1 year. You contributed a lot. He contributed a lot that 1 year, but he's a New York Jet. How do you wear your Super Bowl ring as a Patriot? But he can wear it proudly because he did contribute.
No
He
doubt.
definitely
No doubt.
belongs.
No doubt. Ken Kiley was a defensive back for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think he had 45 interceptions, played on a lot of bad teams. As the next guy we're going to talk about, Ken Kiley was a force in the defensive backfield for the Bengals. So even though he was on a losing team, Shaq, I think he deserves to be in.
Yeah, but sometimes it's hard for a player to get in if you're on a losing team. But it could help you in one sense that you stand out.
True.
Like we talked to Jim Jeffcoat when he's on this show. Jim is probably never going to make it into the Hall of Fame in Canton. He probably won't. Part of the reason is he was overshadowed by so many great players he played with. And you don't want to put in the whole Cowboy team. It's why it took the great Jerry Kramer, the great guard of the Green Bay Packers, till the age of 78 to get in. Because there were so many great Packer players, they got tired of putting them all in. Yeah. You have to leave some of them out in a sense, they're thinking. And I told Jim Jeffcoat, well, if you were with the Detroit Lions, a really bad team, you would have been an iconic play on that team. You would have stood out. It would have increased your chances of getting into the Hall of Fame as opposed to playing for the Cowboys. But of course, he wouldn't have had those 2 Super Bowl rings as opposed to none with the Lions.
Right. Another played on a lot. I think their winning percentage was like 29% with the Browns. Was Joe Thomas, great offensive tackle for the Cleveland Browns. Fans loved him. I saw him with his kid on there. He seems like a really cool guy. But besides that, as a player, he deserves to be in a Hall of Fame. I think.
I'll go a step further. Of the whole list of Hall of Famers you are giving, no one deserves to be more than Joe Thomas.
Yes.
If I can only pick one of them, including Darrell Revis, I would pick Joe Thomas as a Hall of Famer. It was only one guy to pick in this year. Because he played his whole career with the Cleveland Browns, lousy teams his whole time. He was like a rock. He was steady. He was the one shining light of that team, that one consistent player that they had, that one great player that they had. Okay? Yeah. And think of how hard it had to be for Joe Thomas to play with a loser like the Cleveland Browns, never demand a trade, never make a fuss, buy into the team, be the ultimate team player. That's why they love him in Cleveland. That's why he's arguably the greatest living player in Cleveland sports history right now.
High praise and deserves it. Good morning, Diggs BTW. We're on Twitch now, Jack. Also, just got in there, so good morning to you, Diggs. Zach Thomas, Jack. Zach Thomas of the Miami Dolphins, middle linebacker. This is another borderline to me. I don't know if I would have put him in. There was a lot better linebackers that haven't gone in yet, but he gets in. Congratulations to him. But, Jack, you think borderline, no or yes?
Borderline. I'm not saying he doesn't belong in, but I would give some other players maybe a little more of a look first. I'm not saying he's not worthy. If he wasn't, I'd say he's not a Hall of Famer. Yeah. I know some of those Miami defenses he was with were pretty good, and maybe had they won a Super Bowl, we'd give him a little more recognition, because we tend to do that, Mac, in a lot of cases when a player's on a winning team. We look at them a little differently.
Yes.
He was on playoff teams, but they didn't quite take it to the next level.
So there you go. As you said before we started this, the Browns beat the Jets. The Jets got off to a quick lead. Browns come back. That young quarterback for Cleveland looked like he's going to be a good one. They really didn't play. I was disappointed because they didn't really play Zach Wilson that much, Jack. I think he was 3 for 5.
They played him enough. You know what it is with Zach Wilson? They're still babying him. It's his 3rd year in the league, and it's like a confidence thing. Even Robert Salah says it. Everyone is just wanting him to get his confidence back. But I think it's more than that. I think the Jet organization is trying to get the confidence of the fan base back. They want him to like Zach. And Zach threw one long 57-yard completion. And it's on the highlights. And now the Jet fans are smiling. They're not down on Zach Wilson anymore because they have Aaron Rodgers. Zach Wilson's not expected to play. But with Aaron Rodgers mentoring him when Zach Wilson first comes back, eventually he's going to play for whatever reason. Aaron Rodgers might have to go out, might have to miss some time. In this league, anything's possible if it happens. And Zach Wilson has to come into the game. I don't think the fan base is going to boo him now. I think they're going to start encouraging him again. Yeah. And it also, what was important to the Jet organization, Mac, is this. They drafted Zach Wilson 2nd overall in the draft. If they moved on from him, that would have meant it was a wasted draft pick. And no GM and organization wants to waste the number 2 overall pick in the draft. It makes them look bad. Now they could say to their fan base, no, Zach Wilson's going to be a really good quarterback in this league, but we got Aaron, and Aaron Rodgers said it best. He could take a deep breath. He could relax, get himself together. He could reset his career. That's what Zach Wilson's doing, and that's a very good thing.
I watch him, Jack, the eye test, and he still looks kind of fidgety. He still looks kind of, he had one great pass. I give it to him. But then he goes 3 for 5. He falls down on a sack. He misses a wide open guy. That would have been a big play. I think Zach Wilson, I don't know if he's ever going to be a starting quarterback for the Jets, to be honest with you, Jack. I mean, I think the third stringer there, the guy, that boy who played with the Pack, he was more accurate than Zach Wilson was. So,
you play Zach Wilson ahead of Boyle without question. You don't play Boyle ahead of Zach Wilson. That's a no-brainer. I mean, get rid of Zach Wilson. If you have to play Boyle ahead of him, move on from Zach Wilson, cut him now. I mean, that would make no sense. Boyle is not going to get the job done. He flat out is not going to get the job done. Boyle is good in an absolute emergency because he used to be a Rodgers backup at the Packers. He was there while the offensive coordinator Hackett was there, so he would know the system, what to do. But Zach Wilson would absolutely be the guy to come in if anything happened with Aaron Rodgers. And look, it's easy to forget this, Mac. Zach Wilson won games with the Jets in the past till he faltered at the end. Not that he played great, but he did have some success. It wasn't like he was a complete flop. The problem is he'd have a decent game, a terrible game, things like that. But there was, he would show some potential, but what he wouldn't show was consistency. But this is a good situation now. You're backing up the great Aaron Rodgers over there. And eventually when Aaron Rodgers moves on, it could be 2 years from now because he's committed to more than 1 year. It could be 5 or 6 years from now. Who knows? Maybe he'll go with his mid-40s the way Tom Brady did. The whole idea is for Zach Wilson to be the quarterback in waiting.
I don't know if Zach Wilson will be willing to wait 5 years, Jack. But
I thought of that. If Zach Wilson is coming along in practices and really doing well, and even the players behind the scenes see it, say, Zach is good. And how many years are you willing to wait? If you're Zach Wilson, what are you thinking? A guy like Zach Wilson wants to play for this one season. Zach Wilson might be okay with being on the bench because the whole idea is, look, I'm learning from Aaron, I'm this, I'm that. But what happens if Aaron Rodgers plays the whole season? Let's say the Jets make the playoffs. I'm just giving you a scenario: win one game, get eliminated, but they go something like 11-6, and fan bases. This is a good season. Next year will be our year. And let's say next year goes by, and Aaron Rodgers is coming back for third year. It's going to get to the point where Zach Wilson might become a little fidgety. But then on the other hand, Mac, he becomes a free agent. No team is going to give him big money unless he proves it on the field. They don't want to hear what he did in practice or him just throwing a couple of passes, coming in and mop up time and looking good. I can't imagine a team gambling any type of big money on him to be a free agent. When I say big money, not like one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. You know where I'm coming from with that. So he doesn't have any negotiating leverage down the line. It would depend how badly he wants to play. Maybe after 2 years, he sees there's some team that badly needs a quarterback that he could compete for the job. For example, if Zach Wilson, hypothetically, Mac, let's make believe, all of a sudden found himself on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the preseason, they'd allow him to compete for the job of the Washington Commanders. Certain teams he could even compete for now if he outplayed the other quarterbacks in the preseason, but for the most part, he wouldn't be given that opportunity right now. He's in a good spot for this year. He really is.
I'd agree with that. So anyway, the Jets do lose to the Browns. Me and Jack are going to go watch the Giants and Jets play the third preseason game, and we're hoping Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, all of them at least play a quarter or so we can watch them go at it a little bit. That should be a lot of fun.
Exhibition games are never fun, Mac. Don't make it out. Don't deceive anyone. I mean, you hope to catch up. You know what it is about exhibition games? You want to catch a highlight now and then. Unlike a regular NFL game where every play seems to be intense for the most part, you want there to be the occasional long pass, maybe a punt return, just something, a highlight. Like with Zach Wilson yesterday, a 57-yard pass. His performance was uneventful, but that one pass was a highlight reel pass, and people could talk about something.
You know what karma is going to be, Jack? When Aaron Rodgers drops back to pass and Thibodeau sacks him. That would be great karma for you to see. Anyway.
Thibodeau, I believe, could have a good preseason. He'd probably be playing against against the Jets' third-string offensive line. But no, if Aaron Rodgers is in, they're going to have the regulars in. And to sack a quarterback in the preseason, you put him down easily.
Yeah.
But Thibodeau, I could see him being foolish enough to hit Rodgers hard and the melee happening on the field. But listen, I can't knock Thibodeau. He's not going to get to the quarterback too much this season. So if he does in the preseason, I understand him getting a little exuberant.
So the Major League Baseball trade deadline has come and gone, Jack. There's a lot of trades being made, especially the bigger teams picking up a couple pieces here and there they think that could help them get to the World Series. I'm saying, this is my opinion anyway, Jack, I think the biggest trade was Verlander to the Astros. I still think he's effective, and he's another ace. I don't know who the Astros got as their ace right now, but he's sure an ace, and I think that kind of helps the Astros out a lot, Jack.
Justin Verlander is their ace. He's the defending Cy Young Award winner who won the Cy Young Award as a pitcher for the Houston Astros. He came home. Think of him coming into the clubhouse. Those are his guys. That's his team. He's won a couple of World Series Cy Youngs with the Houston Astros. He was just with the Mets for a little while when you think of it. It's the same thing as if he was on the disabled list and he was in rehab and now he rejoined his team, the Houston Astros. Is it the biggest pickup? It could be. There were a couple of more. I mean, the three biggest pickups were pitchers. The Texas Rangers getting Max Scherzer. I mean, that has to be big. They're going all in, the Rangers. They've never won the World Series before. Yeah. And they are going all in with these acquisitions. And also the Baltimore Orioles maybe have the biggest getting Jack Flaherty from the St. Louis Cardinals. That's really going to help them down the stretch.
Good morning to Byron Williams,
Byron.
our Friday football expert comes in here. I know he's happy to hear you talk about the Texas Rangers, Jack, because he's kind of following them to see what they'll do this year. I like Josh Belichick.
Well, I'm going to the game. I'm going to the game tomorrow. I'm going to the game against the Marlins. Yeah.
There you go. That's the Florida Marlins. They're still in it, so that should be a great game, Byron. So.
Yeah, I mean it's a hot news. They've been getting all kind of record attendance here in Texas, in Arlington. But I had an invitation to go back a month ago. I said, yeah, I want to go, and I went last year, my hometown. So I've been going the last couple of years, just going over to the Rangers. The ballpark is so nice. It's excellent, good family environment. I mean, you just can't beat it. It's what the world needs to start looking at. Having fun, family and entertainment, and it's a big plus when you win. Last year I went and saw Joe Judge. Aaron Judge hit that home run last year. You remember? I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun going to the baseball game. You have a whole different perspective on everything.
That's what I tried to tell Byron, Mac, and Dr. Paul Semending about Aaron Judge and his contract, because they were clueless as far as re-signing Judge and what to offer him, the two of those guys. But when you go to a game as a fan, you say to yourself, I'm going to see Aaron Judge and the New York Yankees. That's the big ticket. It's worth more. He's worth more than just what he puts on the field. Mac just looks at what the guy produces on the field and get rid of him otherwise. Aaron Judge is a brand. He's like Nike or something. The brand, with these brands, like I'm giving Nike, Adidas, it's more than just the shoe. It's the brand that someone's wearing, and they go in the store, and then they see how comfortable the shoe is. But Mac just wants to get rid of guys left and right.
You think so? I don't think Mac want to get rid of guys left
Mac
and right.
is a bottom line guy.
I think. Listen, Aaron Judge has really helped them make their playoff run this year, hasn't he, Jack? Aaron Judge is a great ball player, but money wise, hurt again. Yankees aren't making the playoffs. I don't know, Byron. I think that Aaron Judge, if he stays healthy, is one of the best ball players in the league. But again, if he stays healthy, that's the problem with Aaron Judge. So we'll see what happens.
But it's just like the society we live in. I mean, a lot of people are overpaid. I think a lot of players are overpaid, and it really hurt the game. It really hurt the concept. But when you get injured and you can't mass produce, and that's another thing too. People want to see you get paid for what you're supposed to be worth. I
know they're talking about sitting him down for the year. You're paying the guy what, $40 million a year, 30-something million a year. He ain't sitting down. The guy's if he can play, he's supposed to go. And I don't care if we're in it. We're out of it.
Athletes get baby. The Jets played the Browns yesterday. There's no one thinking from either organization, well, the fans are paying good money to see the game. Sponsors are paying good money to the NFL, the networks, to air their product. So they would like the best players on there playing, but it doesn't work that way.
Sorry, I got choked up by that.
But the exciting thing about last night was, we started to kick off the season with football. That's the best thing going.
NFL is bigger than any player. It's not like baseball, Jack. I mean, NFL is the NFL. So Byron, let's get to this real quick. I went over the highlights a little bit with Jack. I'm still on the fence about Zach Wilson. Hopefully he can get some more reps and maybe he becomes a good backup behind Rodgers. Started last night. It ends with the 49ers at Las Vegas, 13th. Then the cutting starts. And I think not only do the coaches want to see these players because they cut 15 players the first round.
Right.
So they want to give these guys every opportunity to make the team and to evaluate these guys. And as me and Jack were saying before you came on, that really these games, it's for us, but it's really for the coaches to evaluate the players that whether to keep them, cut them, or something like that.
Yeah.
So Byron, I mean, I think to me the preseason games are very important for this and this alone. I don't care how many times you play each other, or even if you scrimmage another team. There's really not the same thing as playing each other on the football field.
Absolutely, and then you really get a true evaluation of what these guys' habits are, what they can bring to the team, not only on the football field as well as off the football field. Do these young guys or the players that they're looking at, are they going to mix in with the good chemistry that you want to have in the locker room and so forth? So it's very important. I mean, I think you go into the training camp trying to find out what 25 to 30% players that's in that mix. You know the bulk of what the nucleus of your team gonna be like, and you know what players are established, and you just want to see what the young players can add, and then how you can evaluate them, and then how you can also put them on the practice roster if they don't make the 53-man roster, 54-man roster, and that's the good thing about these coaches. Really get to see the heart of the players, because some of them don't go in at 100%. Some of them have some bad habits that they need to eliminate. So it's so many things that they're looking at, and then this is where the position coaches become more effective as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the last cut is the big one, and that's I think it's a week after the last game. It's August 30th.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got waivers, right? Then you got waivers where you can cut players or put them on waivers, and some team can claim them, or the other team can't claim them, and then you can pick them back up. I mean, there's a lot of stuff still left to go to form your team till you can get down to the practice squad, right, Byron?
Right, exactly right. And that evaluation is really good, because now you're down to like 50 guys, maybe 4 or 5 guys. You decide on what you really want to do with them. They have to put some guys on injury reserve. So it's a mixture of a lot of things that can go on. And then, they're also looking at the salaries of the players and evaluating the mixture of how that can be a part of it as well. And then just knowing that if you get injured, how. And then they're looking at the other team rosters as well, who they could, and how they can evaluate those players that come in. And people don't realize this is a revolving door. They bring players in almost every week to because somebody got hurt or somebody just a lot of things have happened on the team. So and then these coaches coming from different teams as well. Now you got more coaches moving in these positions as well. So, you got coaches that are familiar with players from other teams that they was on or they coach with. And so it's a lot of things in the mixture. And but it's a constant evaluation and floating players in and out of the doors of the franchise.
But Byron, let's say a guy gets cut in training camp. He doesn't catch on with another team. Mm-hmm. Now it's during the season. Let's say it's the middle of November. Right. Could his phone ring and all of a sudden the team says, are you in shape? Are you this? Are you that? Can you come down in an emergency? I mean, that happens once in a while. Someone who's really out of the league, but they remember him in training camp. He had a good attitude and they cut him for whatever reason, but he has an idea as far as the system and they could bring him back.
Absolutely, and that's another thing too. They got people in the front office that constantly calling these players, checking on them, as well as seeing if they still being physical fit. And then another thing too, players have to get physicals, and you can't test negative for drugs, positive for drugs and things like that. So players have to stay in shape year round. I joined the Giants with 8 games left to go my rookie year, and and so it's constantly a shuffle and seeing who will fit and who could come in and add value to the team. So it's this constant flow of things that's happening all the time. And then not only that, they always calling your agent or the people that's representing you as well, just letting you know that we're interested in him. Is he working out? So you're constantly being evaluated. It's real detail and in depth on what's happening with the players and these and the teams.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that people don't realize that's going on constantly behind the scenes in the NFL on teams. I mean, Back to the practice squad, Byron. This one player that you pick up, he may have to sub in for a game or 4 games, and maybe the difference between you making the playoffs on his play or not making the playoffs. I mean, it's very entailed what the teams do and who they pick. And say you're a good running back. If they got a boatload of good running backs on a team, you're not going to be on that team. So it's a lot has to do with what the team, how the team is situated and how many players they got at each position too. So it's like it's a constant, as you say, evaluation in the merry-go-round. That's why I don't get excited about whether this player is going to make it or not make it. He normally is going to make it on some of the team if he's good enough.
No. But Mac, you make a very good point, Mac. But I think it's more than that. And I think Coach Robert Salah said that with the Jets. A number of their guys they cut last year were picked up by other teams. So these players know it might be a long shot for them to make their particular team that they're with at the time. But when they do get cut, if they look good, they essentially become free agents. And some of these other teams who might not have the same depth could pick these guys up. So it's very important, to have your A game at all times, even though the chances of you making the team you're on at the time might be slim.
And the good thing too is to really get familiar with the coaches. For instance, Lenny Forte, he was our defensive back coach when I was with the Giants. And in 1990, I signed with Detroit, and because his brother was the head coach. All because of Lenny was with the Giants. And so it's good for a player not only to have a relationship with your position coach, but have a relationship with all the coaches, because you never know where those coaches are going to land. And then they can also say, well, this guy got a good work habit. This guy can bring value. This guy got speed. This guy can do this. And I think it's about relationships as well. And I think it can go a long way as well. So you want to get to know everybody that's on the staff, because you never know what the staff going to end up. And then just build that relationship, because it's very important that players get to know that they need to be vested. If you're playing in the National Football League, you need to at least play 2.5 years, which is 3 credit seasons, and then you qualify for your pension and the benefits. So those are some of the key things that players need to know. A lot of players that play 1 year and 2 years, and they just sitting on the fence. And I think you're hurting yourself if you get sitting on the fence. You need to at least play 3 years now to be vested, and then that way you have some type of value to life when you get a little bit older, like a lot of old guys that I see every day. It's very important that you can get vested.
Yes, that's note to Saquon Barkley, who did it, and Josh Jacobs. Note to them two guys. So, Byron, this is where I love having you on, because I can draw from your experiences in the NFL. You said you played in one Hall of Fame game, if I remember correctly.
1985. If you Google 1985, it'll be a nice highlight tape come on, and it'll talk about Phil Simms the previous year in 1984. It was the first Giant player to throw over 4,000 yards, and we were playing the Houston Oilers, and I had close to 100 yards that game. But to be in Canton, Ohio, and be in that environment and have an opportunity to play in a Hall of Fame game is everlasting. So. And I think if a player was able to experience that, it would enlighten them for life. I think it's just a good thing that happened. But we played the Houston Oilers, and and it was a good game. I think Roger Staubach was one of the Hall of Famers that year that got inducted. Roger Staubach. He's a Tom Landry. I know it's the Cowboys. There was a lot of Cowboy fans there, so it's really fun atmosphere they have created the Hall of Fame game now like no other. I mean, it's such just like the Super Bowl almost. It's just a big, great time of just enjoying the history and the story of football and all the players who have played the game. So it's a great feeling.
Big event, definitely a big event. We know that preseason isn't what it was. Mm-hmm. I belong to a lot of football groups, and the 49ers groups was complaining about people getting hurt. And, the reason for so many injuries, and we've discussed this before, is because they don't hit enough. And as Jack said before the show, or maybe it was in the beginning of the show, if you're going to get hurt, you'd rather get hurt now than just before the season starts or during the season, right? I mean, this is if you're gonna.
Right.
But back when you played, there wasn't all these injuries, Byron, and the preseason was a lot different. You had 4 preseason games. The vets played a lot more than they do now because they wanted them getting hit and hitting people. And the backup players, it looks like it was a lot harder to make the team back then than it is now.
Oh yeah, it was a lot harder to make the team because they definitely know back then kind of who they wanted to have on their team, but you came in shape, and so that's another thing too. You were more in shape. I mean, we had to have when we reported to training camp, you had to have this fitness test that they put you through, and it was enduring. I mean, I remember one year we had to run 200 yards. Parcells had us run 200-yard races and with 1 minute rest in between. So if you're not in shape, it will show. And then if you are overweight, if you weigh at 200 and you come in at 220, oh man, that's a red flag to them. You don't put on 20 pounds and report to training camp because that's a red flag. So we had certain criteria that you know about, but you played more in the preseason game because they prepared you for the regular season game.
Yeah, you know that, guys, there's certain, I think you mentioned the 49ers a little while ago. There's certain quarterback battles that are going on in the league that haven't been completely determined. One of them would be the 49ers. It appears as if they're going to start Brock Purdy the way Kyle Shanahan's talking based on his performance last year. And I think the players want Purdy to start because he had success. Who should really be starting there between Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, or Trey Lance? I know the front office would love for Trey Lance to step it up and win the job because they invested so much in him. And Brock Purdy's the player's choice. To me, I would start Sam Darnold, actually. I think he's the best one at this moment amongst the 3. And then maybe go to Brock Purdy later if Sam Darnold's struggling a bit, because I think Brock Purdy was 100% a game manager. Nothing wrong with that. He's not going to be a difference maker to push the Niners over the top. Sam Darnold, at least, is a bit of a difference maker. He has a little more upside than Brock Purdy, I should say, as a difference maker.
Yeah, and I think they have a good problem to have. I think 3 good quarterbacks, and I just think it's just going to be left up to Shanahan.
Don't say that to Mac. 3 good quarterbacks with the Niners. Don't say that to Mac.
I think the 49ers is set up that your quarterback position is automatic. You got your role player, and you got all this talent around you. So I mean, that's just a good position to be in if you got that much talent. I mean, they got a great defense. They got great receivers. They got one of the best running backs in the league. So you're talking about a team that's really just a hair away from going back to the Super Bowl. And I think with the coaching staff that they have, it just make a good fit. So if I was a quarterback there, I'd be so excited. But yeah, they got 3 good choices. I think all 3 guys would be possibly, but I think if I was them, I would go with Brock Purdy personally, because I think he's ready, prepared. I think he's a game manager, and he haven't made a mistake yet.
Well, the 49ers are kind of old school football. They still run the ball a lot more. They got a great defense. They run the ball and then they throw sort of old school, like the Giants. Sims is a little bit more than and Manning were a little bit more than a field manager. I mean, they'd open up once in a while, but the same basic philosophy, right? So I think they don't want mistakes, and I think this is why Sam Darnold's not starting. He takes more chances than Brock Purdy would, and to push the ball down the field, you're gonna make more mistakes. I don't think the 49ers want that. I think they're in a great position with Purdy and Darnold. There's no doubt. I think I've always thought they should try to get rid of Trey Lance in some trade. Make a trade, get him out of there, because he just
you're not going to get much in return.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
Holding on to a guy sometimes. He's still on his rookie deal.
You're probably right. Go ahead.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's becoming intriguing. Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. It seemed like when Baker Mayfield was signed by the Buccaneers, he was going to be their starter, but he admits he's been struggling. in the preseason and camp. He's been missing reads, and Kyle Trask has closed the gap. And it's easy to forget that after Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl, they picked last in the first round and they drafted Kyle Trask. If you're going to draft someone that highly,
right,
it's not for him to be a backup to the guy who replaces Tom Brady and Baker Mayfield. He was supposed to be the heir apparent if Brady was going to leave. Yet they didn't have enough confidence in him to just give him the job. So they went out and got Baker Mayfield. Now it's like Kyle Trask is growing up. He's improving. So that's going to be interesting who's going to get the starting nod for the Buccaneers.
Absolutely. If you're a first-round draft choice, they give you a year or two, and I think you're right. He's ready to really go in. That should be his team now. He done seen enough. He, been around Tom Brady. He been shown how to become a leader on and off the football field. So I think that's a good point. And I think everybody have penciled Baker Mayfield in, but it's not like that at all. It's all about, if you draft a guy first round, you're gonna give him every benefit and give him a chance to really have his team. And that's the whole point of being a first round draft choice in the National Football League.
Well, Baker Mayfield was a first round draft choice too. So I mean,
but not with that team. Not
with that team. But yeah, and there was a different head coach too, right? A different player. So I don't know. We'll have to see with Trask. We'll have to see how good he is. There's a lot of first rounders that haven't been doing too well. AKA the Jets with Zach Wilson. So I mean, how do you really don't know, Byron? You really don't. Everybody says they know, but they don't know what the first round draft choice, whether they're going to make the team and be starting or not. Everybody says, yeah, this one's a definite. You don't know that until they start playing football like you did. Everybody thought Phil Simms was a terrible choice, and come on. But anyway,
you're absolutely right though. It's a transformation, and just to see if these guys can come in and mass produce. And some guys just be a bust. I mean, you see it every year.
Well, a question's not asked, guys. I've never heard this question asked. Of all the quarterbacks in the NFL this season, let's say all of them are playing terribly every starter, game after game, terrible, I mean. Who is the safest? Who's going to last the longest? Not get replaced no matter how dreadfully he plays.
Are you talking about
every single quarterback? It actually might be Aaron Rodgers, and I'm going to tell you why, guys. Because once you replace Aaron Rodgers and bring in the backup, you've lost him for good. Would it be a Patrick Mahomes? If Patrick Mahomes is the worst quarterback in the league for the first 8-9 games, you're not going to replace him with anyone. But certain guys a lot of guys would be replaceable, just a handful of guys. They might let them continue to have these 4 interception games, game after game.
Yeah, and you got, I think it's about the top 10 quarterbacks that's in the league are probably going to be hard to replace. So, think about Josh Allen and players like that. They hard to replace because they bring so much to the team and what they have done in the last 3 or 4 years as well.
Buffalo Bills are 1-8, and Josh Allen is playing terribly. He'll get replaced. They'll try someone else. They'll try Case Keenum to see if he can rally the team. But the Jets aren't going to bring in Zach Wilson to rally the team if Aaron Rodgers is awful. They're going to keep sticking with Aaron Rodgers to the bitter end. Patrick Mahomes, you would think, has been so great. They'll try to keep working with him if he's absolutely terrible half the season. Certain guys, I think, can get by being terrible. I actually don't think Josh Allen is one of them. I know Dak Prescott isn't going to survive. You even wonder with Daniel Jones. I don't think he would survive if the Giants are 1-8 and he's absolutely awful. Just a handful of guys could survive the whole 17-game schedule.
Yeah, I agree with that because I mean, just the way the game is and how bad teams want to win and go to the playoffs, and it just changed the momentum of what their teams look like. yeah, so it's definitely about going to the playoff, and it's about production. What you do on the foot. What have you done for me lately? For sure.
Let me ask you this, Byron. We saw Deshaun Watson on the sidelines yesterday. Is this a bounce back year for Deshaun Watson? Everything that's happened with him, was it just a question last year of him being rusty? Was he going to be the Deshaun Watson of old, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, at least in my opinion? Was he going to be closer to the Deshaun Watson of last year? So he's just going to be another guy, maybe the 15th best quarterback?
Well, I just think that he have to mass produce, and he have to come in and bring the true value that they think this guy can play up to, the capability he think they can play up to. But at the end of the day, it's all about production and leadership and not making mistakes and not.
I know that, Byron. How good is he going to be? I'm asking you.
I'm thinking that
I know that.
I'm thinking that he gonna be good. I'm thinking that he should be good.
Will he be one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL like before? What do you think?
I think he will be in the top 10.
Okay. Yeah. What about you, Mac? You agree with Byron, top 10 quarterback this season?
No. I don't think he's going to be ever the same as he was with the Houston Texans. I think all that stuff has got to him. So I think whether it's stress or pressure or whatever, I don't think he was very loose when he played with Houston, and now I think he's still under the microscope, and I don't think he'll ever be the same again. Byron, let's take your, and you got to be honest here. I know you know some of these guys, and you're an NFL PA guy. Hall of Fame inductees. Now, me and Jack didn't mention Andre Ware. Of course, he made the Hall of Fame.
I don't know. Can Byron answer that?
Andre Ware can't sing no national anthem. I know that.
Thank you. I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to be.
You said he can't sing?
He can't sing nothing.
He was good. He was good. I thought he was good.
God, Jack, you get to clear the wax out your ears or something.
Listen, what's better, Andre Ware's voice or Jim Jeffcoat's golf game?
That is a close race. I tell you, I'm not gonna talk about my partner Jim, so I'm gonna leave him alone.
All right. Well, Andre Ware definitely deserves to go in the Hall of Fame as an outside linebacker. I think he deserves being a Hall of Fame. As a singer, he's never going to make, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's for sure. Okay, let's do this, Byron. You might have played against a couple of these guys. You might have not. You got to be honest. Rondé Barber, Hall of Famer or not?
Hall of Fame.
Coach Don Coryell as a coach, Hall of Famer or not?
Definitely a Hall of Famer.
Wow, you're supposed
because I think he brought the air attack. They kind of opened it up. The offense. He created some things that with some excitement, brought excitement to the game of football, and just didn't quite win this big Super Bowl and things like he should have. But I think what he brought to the game was incredible.
Byron gave the same answer I did. He's not a Hall of Famer based on accomplishment as much as being an innovator.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. Chuck Howley.
His stats was impressive, and he's on the fence for me. He's on the fence. But the game have changed. I think they need to start putting guys in the Hall of Fame according to the time frame they played.
Okay. All right. Joe Klecko.
Definitely Hall of Famer. Joe was an exciting guy.
Darrelle Revis, I think we all agree should be in the Hall of Fame.
He created that special. He any receiver he could go and play against. So he was one of the first guys to do that. He switched around. He just switched around, rotated around the field, and he called it the Revis Island. So he created something that was unique.
Yes. Ken Kiley, Cincinnati Bengal defensive back.
I think that's when you get to the point to where you have to find some of the best players that played for certain teams that didn't get the publicity and he probably deserved to be there. But it's only 400 some guys and that ever made it to the Hall of Fame right now.
Joe Thomas, tackle for the Cleveland Browns.
Definitely, Joe Thomas should be there. He allowed 30 sacks his own career. you know, it's an awesome individual. So yeah.
Byron, it was my opinion of all the names that Mac is mentioning to you before and maybe after now. Joe Thomas is the one guy I would vote for amongst all others. If I could have only one guy go in the Hall of Fame of all the names Mac has mentioned for this year, I would pick Joe Thomas, number one.
Absolutely. No doubt.
Okay. Last one, Zach Thomas.
Zach Thomas, he's on the fence for me.
Me too. I think there's a linebackers even during his era that are better than him. I think Jack made a point where sometimes some teams don't get a lot of players in, a lot of players go on in certain teams. Different eras, so maybe they do that just to kind of even it out a little bit.
Yeah, because you know they have on there how many times you made the Pro Bowl and blah blah blah. And I think, you know, it's they got to look at everything with these players, not only what they're doing, what they're bringing to the community, you know, what they're doing now. I think it goes beyond sometime on the football field, but yet, you know, the Hall of Fame is real tough to get in. I mean, just one of those things.
Byron, it's wonderful if a guy does a lot for the community. I mean it. But I don't know, should it have any bearing, you know, on him getting in the Hall of Fame at all, unless he increases the value of the franchise. If he does work off the field and the value of the franchise goes up, or he recruits players for the team, makes it more of a fan-friendly place or something, I don't see being a nice guy gets in the Hall of Fame, unless you win the NFL Man of the Year award. It's one guy wins it in the league. And if you win that, I don't know whether you're allowed to win that a couple of times. I don't think you are. You know, then it could maybe count for a little bit. But it's got to be what the guy basically has done on the field. And intangibles, too, obviously. What the guy means in the locker room as a leader. I wouldn't have voted for Terrell Owens to get in the Hall of Fame. I know what he's done on the field. He was great on the field. Great accomplishments. He destroyed locker rooms. He was a selfish guy, destroyed locker rooms.
So do you not go on production on the football field? If he's in the top 5 wide receivers, he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame?
It minimizes.
I'm talking for a stat.
Would you agree with me this? A guy could be incredible on the field, but that could be offset by him being a deterrent in the locker room, by him being a poison in the locker room.
Yeah, what about Chris Carter? I mean, Chris Carter had drug problems, so you got, you know,
he wasn't a lot, but he was a team guy from everything I could gather. Maybe
I'm just saying, players need to understand that you need to have a real clear, defined life on and off the football field as well. I think that really helped you. But, you know, it's also now you get the exposure. These guys get more exposure than ever before. So, I mean, they with the technology and these iPhones and all this stuff, it's just at the tip of your finger. You can find out anything about a player. So it's a different world we live in. So these players need to understand, you know, you got to actually walk the fine line just to make sure that you can be that Hall of Fame that you need to become, because if that's the goal, because it's the people like Elvis Walls, for example. I mean, his name is being brought up, but he's not there yet. Just like, you know, Drew Pearson. And one of the things that really icked me about some of this stuff is you're a Dallas Cowboy. People are more wanted to see you go into the Hall of Fame, and there's a lot of good players that play for the teams that hadn't got that, hadn't got a chance, so you put their name in the ballot.
I just want to say Antonio Brown, let's use him as an example. To me, I would vote for him to get in the Hall of Fame because I would have more. No, let me tell you, his last year, I'm going to throw that out. They cut him. He was done. They won the Super Bowl, the Buccaneers, with him. He was a great receiver with the Steelers. Stuff that's been going on in the news after, he didn't really tear apart locker rooms the way Terrell Owens did. Mike Tomlin kept him under control with the Steelers. Then after he left the Steelers, there were contract issues for a little while with the Raiders, not with the Raiders.
Yeah.
But then when he went to the Buccaneers, He was a good citizen on the year they won the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl with him buying in, unlike Terrell Owens, who would constantly be fighting with his quarterback, and everything in the locker room was a poison. That's why the Cowboys even had to move on from Terrell Owens. It was his ability.
I actually got a chance to meet Terrell Owens. I know him. I did like 5 or 6, 8 football camps for Terrell Owens. So I know him from a different perspective. I know his heart.
He's a nice guy. I'm not saying he's not a nice guy. He was a poison in the locker room. Maybe he is a nice guy. Maybe
I don't think he was a poison. I don't think he was a poison in the locker room. I think he just wanted to be. He wanted the football, and he wanted the chance of receiving footballs. But I think it's a different perspective. I just, when you know somebody personally, you have a different outlook on life. So I just think, just since I know him personally, I don't think he was a poison. I think his production on the football field speaks for itself.
Well, I have to agree with Jack to a point. I think Terrell Owens does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but he was a poison. He fought people in the locker room, Byron. He ended up fighting the Eagles linebacker there, and he was not a good teammate as far as locker room. I think
now. But now, if you talk to him, I think he can look back on that and see the mistakes that he made.
We all think about what we did formerly, and then maybe try to make better yourself and stuff like that. So I understand what you're saying. I just think that he was definitely a poison. I mean, I felt bad for Donovan McNabb. I mean, the dude brings him to the Super Bowl, and you're this idiot. So I just think he was not good to be on a locker room guy. Production wise, definitely Hall of Fame guy. There's no doubt about that.
Guys, when they had when he was with the Niners, they had a day for Jerry Rice, and Terrell Owens is making all the catches and smiling. You figure you want to defer. It's Jerry Rice Day, but whatever.
Yeah, and he was immature. He was immature on a lot of things that happened. I agree with that.
Yes, definitely. So Byron, any other thing before we let you go? You got anything going on?
I've been so busy. We excited about the football season getting kicked off. I'm now getting back into my football mode, but right now just happy to see you guys and to bring some good excitement this year, and hopefully our teams win. Go Giants, and I'm excited about the Jets too, Jack. So I can't wait to see what happens.
All right.
Yeah, just a little caution where if New York's excited about the Jets and the Giants, keep this in mind. Mac and myself are excited about the Yankees and Mets at the start of the season, and we see what's going on.
Don't Jack hates the Mets. Don't let him fool you. Thanks for coming on, Byron. We'll see you again next week. See Byron Williams on J&B Talking Shop every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Have a great one, Byron.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, Byron.
All right, so Byron is out, and we bring in our Patriots / college football / Yankees / he slash. We're just gonna call him Slash from now on.
Slash, yeah. I always wanted a nickname.
How you doing today?
I always wanted a cool nickname. Good. How you guys doing? Listen, I'm starting to think that this Byron Williams situation is like me and Robert on Sundays.
Yes,
I'm chasing him out of the show.
Yes, he's intimidated by you, Keith. It must be.
Yeah, well, I can understand why he would be.
Yes. So
fat, balding 63-year-old men probably scared the crap out of ex-NFL players.
Yes, they do. Keith Engles, TGI Sports, has a great, prospering college football show that I see out there right now. And, of course, he is our expert when it comes to the Patriots and the Yankees and the Knicks. We're not going to cover the Knicks today because really nothing going on there, Keith. So let's start with the Patriots. I was reading from the Patriots site how Bill O'Brien's offense is starting to kick in now. The offense finally had a better day than the defense did. I think the Patriots last year had one of the best defenses in the league. It hasn't changed that much. So got to be feeling good. They're talking about a lot of motion this year, Keith, in and it looks like they're going to throw the tight ends too, Keith. Holy cow, what's going on over there?
Yeah, I mean, they're starting to grasp the offense a lot. Mac Jones in particular, they talked about how he's got a great grasp of what's going on, which isn't surprising because that's where he went for help last year, right? Was to Alabama and Bill O'Brien, theoretically. So, and the wide receivers are starting to get to it as well. Kendrick Bourne had a good practice the other day, and a couple other guys too have started to step up the tight ends, as you mentioned. One thing that was interesting that came out of the last couple of practices is Rashandre Stevenson has barely been on the practice field, which he's not terribly happy about. He was asked about it, and he said, you need to talk to Bill. But I don't know. I think it could be just, for as all I know, it could be just the packages that they're working on, right? And he hasn't been part of that. But I don't think it's anything that's really a big deal.
I didn't hear you give any love to Juju.
Juju, I'm sorry. Yeah, Juju actually got some good props yesterday too. The last couple of days in practice with his pretty much what's his strength, the underneath stuff. So yes, listen, I want Juju to prosper. I'm not a big fan, but as a fan of the Patriots, I do not wish him to do well or not do well.
Okay. Am I missing something about Belichick? When the player gets in his doghouse, he stays in it for a while before Belichick lets him out. It's as if he wants to teach the player a lesson.
Yes, it's absolutely true. It could be whether it's things like Mac Jones last year, stepping outside the organization. It could be errors on the field. I remember in Stevenson's rookie year, early on in the season, he fumbled at a big moment down near the goal line, and we didn't see him for like 3 weeks after that. So, especially with young players, he doesn't tolerate mistakes very well, and you will get in his doghouse, and he will keep you there for a bit, as you said.
Wow. Well, Henry Hunter, tight end, which I think that's one of the ones you picked up a couple years ago that really wasn't utilized. That's Bill O'Brien with the tight ends has always been big when he was the offensive coordinator there. And They liked to dominate in between the hash marks there, Keith. It was very important to the Patriots' success, and it looks like they're going to kind of go back to that again.
Well, when they signed him and Juju Smith, or not Juju Smith, Jonnu Smith, that was their goal, was to take back the middle of the football field, which they controlled all through their dynasty, whether it was O'Brien or McDaniels. Part of their success was controlling the middle of the football field on offense, and they did that with using 2 tight ends a lot. And I do think you're going to see that a lot this year, returning to that and trying to make use of that, and using them as targets in the red zone as well, where they were putrid last year. They were last or second to last in the league in red zone offense. Yeah. So that's going to be important down there as well.
So of course we're all excited. We all think our teams are going to be doing good. I think the Giants will compete for the playoffs again this year. Just my opinion. The Patriots. I mean, as you see them progressing now, are you starting to feel a little bit better now, Keith, than you did maybe earlier about this team and their chance at making the playoffs?
I felt better even before than a lot of people were giving them credit for. I thought their chances were being downplayed. The over/under on wins was kind of low, and I really thought Bill O'Brien, again, this team last year, as flawed as it was, finished 8-9. They lost 3 games they really should have won. And if you turn just 2 of those around, you're in the playoffs. And I thought Bill O'Brien was worth 2 wins to this team, and the change in the offensive philosophy, which gets them to 10 wins. I'm just doing simple, I'm not a math genius here, but you give me 2 more wins, I'm in the playoffs. And I thought that was certainly conceivable. I don't think the rest of the team stepped back enough to say this increase in offensive production would not benefit their record in the coming year. So I don't know that I've gotten more. It's reinforced the optimism I had a month ago, sure, or 2 months ago even. I'm excited. I mean, to me, the bigger thing to replace here than the biggest thing to replace is some of the leadership they lost in Devin McCourty leaving that secondary, and so the secondary is a little bit concerned to me more than the offense right now. The defense was good, as you said, last year, Mac, but there were, especially later in the year, they gave up some big plays.
I'm listening to Herm Edwards the other day. He's very high on the Patriots. Let's say the Patriots are a double-digit win team. They go, let's say, 10-7. I can't figure out who's going to be the casualty in the AFC East. I can't imagine every team having a winning record. Is it going to be the Buffalo Bills slipping to under 500? Will it be the Dolphins who are Super Bowl contending? The Jets are too much on the upswing to go 7-10 and 8-9 again. So who's going to be the casualty if it's not New England?
Well, I think there's so many things that can happen, right, Jack? I mean, the Dolphins, if Tua gets hurt and is gone, well, they could easily fall to the bottom of that division in my mind. Same thing in New York if something happened to Rodgers, or Rodgers can't perform up to his historical norm. I said before, I think this division is so even that any one of these teams can win it, and any one of these teams could finish last, because I think it's that even, and I think injuries could be the differentiating factor here between these teams, because they are good. And they're going to beat each other up. I don't think somebody's going to win 13 games in this division. I think, 10, 11 wins could win the division, because I think they'll beat each other up.
Well, Jim Jeffcoat said that on JB Talking Shop. Him and Byron were talking about what's going to come into play, and they both said the injuries, especially in the AFC East.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's going to be
always a big factor anywhere, right? It's not rocket science for us to say that.
But when the teams are so close, Keith, that's when it really affects. I mean, if the Saints say Derek Carr gets hurt, I don't think that makes them fall to the bottom of that division. I think they're still competing. But if
Derek Carr, if he gets hurt, the Saints might actually improve and do better than you anticipate. Come on.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, Jack, the division you're playing in matters a lot. The Central, the East, both East and both leagues are very, very competitive. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I'm starting to get a little excited about the Patriots too, Keith. I really am.
Yeah, and I am as well, as you know. And I will add on to your comment about the Giants that you threw out there in the beginning. I am very high in your Giant team as well. Not being a fan, I'm looking at this totally with no skin in the game. That's a good football team, a really good football team, and they're going to be better than they were last year. But again, the margin for error is small, right?
It is.
It could totally be a different story.
It is, Keith. I just like the way they've upgraded their fast strike capability. That's what I'm.
I get into arguments with the Mad New Yorker all the time, telling me the direction his team has taken is wrong. I said they hadn't made the playoffs in how long? He doesn't like Daybell. He doesn't like Shine.
Guys, sometimes everything goes right that goes wrong for a team. And either they get a cushion or deficit. Last year's Giant team was 6-1. And they have situations like winning a game against Tennessee when their kicker Bullock missed the game-winning field goal at the end. Otherwise, they would have been 8-1. And I look at the Giants, how they finished last year. I mean, after going 6-1 to start the season, they were 3-6-1 in the regular season, which is the real Giant team. They're not likely to go 6-1 unless they're a really good team at the start. So
they beat a really good football team in the playoffs. Don't forget. You're forgetting they beat a good team in the playoffs, too, though.
They did, but the way they lost to the Eagles, they lost very timidly to the Eagles.
Jack, the Giants have a very different team this year, especially at skill positions. It's not the same Giant team as last year. Like it's not the same Jet team as last year. Yeah. You got a quarterback now. I mean, if I want to compare the Jets to the Jets of last year, you really can't. So it's a different year. I don't like predicting off last year's records or players, especially when you have a big turnover. So, Keith, let's talk a little bit about the Yankees before we get to college football. Who knew it? Rizzo has a concussion. He was playing really good in the beginning. Before the concussion, then he bats like 179. What's going on?
How can – I said this morning quickly, and I'll talk more about it, I'm sure, as the weekend goes on. How is it possible that a medical staff can't diagnose somebody for 3 months with a concussion? How is that even possible?
I don't know.
So either they're misreporting it now to make it look better what he's gone through, which doesn't make any sense to me, or this medical staff is just incompetent. He said I've had, and maybe part of it's on him. Now, again, I won't blame just the medical staff, because if he didn't report all the symptoms that he was talking about yesterday, then shame on him, because he said I wasn't sleeping, I couldn't focus if I played. All these things he talked about. If he was telling this to people, then something's seriously wrong. If they let him go up there in that condition, He could have got seriously injured besides everything else.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't understand how this can go on for 3 months. I have no idea.
I don't either. I was. It's like, oh, Rizzo sucks now. Well, how come a guy that was playing that well, and historically he's a good ball player. He may not be a Hall of Famer, but he's a good ball player.
He's a consistent
from that to that so fast. You knew something was wrong. So I don't get it either. It's just, to me, I guess they don't have people in the right positions in the organization.
Somebody needs to look at this and find out whether this is just Rizzo never said a word, and maybe that's why. But if he was telling people these symptoms he talked about the other day, then I want to know who just turned a blind eye to it.
Right. I agree. Any thoughts of Herman? I mean, he says he's an alcoholic, and you know, they're putting him on injured reserve list. I mean, you know, I mean, my uncle was alcoholic. I know how that is. But is it because of what scrutiny he was under? Is it because, you know, I don't know. He pitched a perfect game, and then he, you know,
he's had alcohol issues in the past. And listen, I want him to get better. It's a disease. I get it. Right. A lot of people won't recognize things like that. My feelings on Herman are a little mixed anyway, because of the situation he went through a couple of years ago with domestic violence. And I don't have any tolerance for that at all. If I'm the Yankees, I would have cut ties with him then when he was arrested for beating up his wife. And I think in the Dominican, if I'm not mistaken. But I would have cut ties with him then, because that's one thing I don't have any tolerance for. I give guys second chances for drug issues, alcohol issues, letting the air out of footballs, whatever you want to talk about. But when it comes to putting your hands on women, I'm just not okay with that. And I think if any team I owned, I would cut ties with that guy right away. So I
think the Yankees will at the end of the season. He won't be back this year.
Yeah.
And I think this is his second major thing. And if this was someone like Garrett Cole, your ace pitcher, teams put up with it more and they bring him back because he could really help them win. Domingo Germán had one great moment in Yankee history. Ironically, he's always going to be remembered in Yankee history because of the perfect game. Ironically, you know, only the fourth one in Yankee history.
Unfortunately,
I think we've seen the last of him as a New York Yankee, because his ceiling hasn't been that high as a pitcher all around.
It's unfortunate. It is. Well, unfortunately, some Yankee fans like me will remember him for beating his wife up. That's what I'll remember first, always, because I can't. I've lost friends. I've lost friends because of this topic, and I just don't tolerate it. You're out of my life if you do that.
Well, Hall of Fame. See, if some Hall of Famers were not very nice people either.
Oh, so, I agree.
I agree. But we think of them being Hall of Famers more than we do of them, you know, personally what they did. So, I mean, I know this happened in the past. It just isn't so.
Oh, for sure. I'm not saying it's an isolated instance.
Yeah. The Yankees really stand pat at the trade deadline. They pick up a couple relievers, Middleton being one of maybe the biggest pickup they had. There's still a little hope of them making the playoff. There's a
lot of hope, Mac. A lot of hope. What do I mean, a little hope?
There's too many good teams out there, Jack. I don't think so.
But listen, the hope that they have to make the playoffs is better than the hope that they have to do anything once they get there, because this is a very flawed baseball team still. Even if they make the playoffs, they're only 2.5 games out of the wild card, which, again, is very doable. But I'm going to get there. I have the same team that's failed against elite pitching for the last how many years? And
yeah, they listen.
Too many holes.
Keith, I don't want to be totally down on them. I mean, they won last night. Volpe had a great game. Stanton is streaking right now. Judge, if he gets better, and the pitching comes together. The pitching is the biggest problem I have with you. If you don't have Cole pitching, you don't know what you're going to get. And that's basically the problem I got with the Yankees.
A big, and I don't know if he's starting this weekend, but Nestor Cortez is back this week, and I think he might be pitching in this series. I'm not positive. This is a big series anyway against the Astros. They show some life here, win 3 out of 4. Maybe I got some hope. Nestor comes back if he does pitch, and he's going to be a key to this stretch run, because they need, as you said, depth behind Cole. Listen, Clark Schmidt didn't pitch bad last night. Clark Schmidt's pitched fairly well since the first month of the season. He's not Garrett Cole, but he's this competent back of the rotation guy for a team. So Severino's pitch showed he cannot do anything. So I think it's hugely important that Cortez come back and show that he's the player he was before he got hurt.
No, I know this guy's Mac. Pags always comes in during Yankee talk because he's intrigued by the Yankees. That's why he always comes in when we're talking Yankee baseball.
Understandable. He's got a Yankee as his manager. I get it.
So everybody, this is a Philly sports guy comes in with us on Fridays and Sundays. Pags, we're going to finish up with a little college football update with Keith, and then I want to get to some Philly sports with you before we get to our guest coming in at 9:30. So Keith, there's a lot of projected movement and ACC and the SEC top 10 and KC's top 100. So what are you looking for here? Is any moves going to be made this upcoming year, or is it all going to happen in the next couple of years?
Well, any team that wants to leave their conference has basically got to let their conference know by August 15th to be able to move to a new conference next year. Florida State, for instance, pretty much said the other day, it's not a matter of if, it's when we leave the ACC. They're not staying. They feel that them and Clemson have been leading the revenue stream for the ACC, and they don't like it, and they're ready to leave. And there's a lot of rumors that the Big Ten is after Clemson and Florida State, but also there's rumors that with Colorado leaving, the Pac-12 gets more and more destabilized, that they're after Washington and Oregon, maybe even Cal and Stanford on top of that. So there's all kinds of machinations going on. And we're going to see the end of the Pac-12. The Pac-12's bleeding out right now. They're just, you might as well give them last rites. It's over. They can't save themselves unless somehow and again, I'm not for any of this realignment coast to coast, but in the current climate we're in, unless they find a way to merge with the ACC Pac and the Pac-12 and go coast to coast, both those leagues are probably not going to survive. And it's sad to see. We're going to have two super conferences and everybody else.
I agree, Keith. College football has just gone through so many changes in the last few years with everything, the NIL, the way they do business now, moving from conference to conference. As me and Jack said, next year they're going to start drafting high school players, and then they'll become pros, and that'll be that.
It's possible. The NIL's become such. They have a new bill introduced into Congress called the PASS Act. That Tommy Tuberville, former coach of Auburn and Texas Tech and Cincinnati, he's a senator now out of Alabama, and Joe Manchin from West Virginia, bipartisan bill to put some regulations into place about NIL, and it also touches on the trade portal within the same bill. But the problem is, even if they pass the bill, there's going to say somebody's got to police it. They're not going to police it. The NCAA shows they don't want to police it. They passed the buck from the beginning on this. And we'll let the universities police themselves, which is a brilliant idea, because it's like letting bank robbers protect the money in banks, right? God.
That's true. That's the truth.
It's just the stupidest idea ever. And this thing has got to get under control, because it was never meant to be what it is today. And I said from the beginning, it would get bastardized. NIL was not supposed to be any kind of recruiting inducement at all. Well, not only is it a recruiting inducement, it's also an inducement to get you to leave your team and come somewhere else for more money.
Yeah.
Free agency.
It's professional football free agency, college style. That's all it is.
With you combine it with the transfer portal, these kids are free agents every year. Every year.
I agree. And that's even worse than what's going on in the pros right now.
Oh, agreed.
Yes. So, again, the Philly sports guy joins us. Pags, you've got to be pretty excited about what the Phillies are doing right now, playing the Marlins. They're right now the second wild card team if it ended today. You picked up a pretty good pitcher for pitching depth. So you got to be feeling good out there about the Phillies, Pags.
Yeah, as long as the name doesn't begin with Trey Turner.
Yeah, Trey's having a hard time.
He is having a difficult time out there. Just imagine if this team was hitting on all cylinders, where we would be. I think that if we were hitting on all cylinders, we'd probably be rivaling the Braves. However, I don't foresee it being a problem once we get in the playoffs, because the Braves always seem to fall a little bit short and that's when they seem to turn it on. So hopefully they have that proverbial switch that they could turn on where everybody starts to do what they need to do in the playoffs.
Well, that wild card. Go ahead, Keith.
I was just curious. Did you think they would do more at the trade deadline? I know they brought in Lorenzen for the back of the rotation, but did you think they'd do more at the deadline, Bags?
No, it was not a very good pool.
Not for the
players at the deadline.
Not for the prices you had to pay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like it just didn't seem like it made any sense to try to go after any of the bigger names. And once they said we are not trading Ohtani, and then the Padres said, well, we're going to be buyers instead of sellers. That all right, well, that took away any possibility of any of the people. Like I could have sworn, like if I was the Angels, I would have gone after Soto with everything that I had. And then tried to go with the big three, the 2, 3, and 4 hitter. Soto, Ohtani, and Trout. And that's how I would have tried to get into the playoffs at their 5 games behind the wild card spot. Didn't happen. Well, so I feel like all these teams were a little wishy-washy.
Listen, the NFL wild card, the Phillies still have a chance of not getting in. I mean, that is very tight over there. There's some teams that are battling for first right now. Before you go, you've got San Francisco, the first wild card, the second wild card, the Phillies. Then you got Miami, Cincinnati hanging in there. Some of these are still are competing for first place. They're competing against the Dodgers. They're competing against Milwaukee. So those teams have a shot at either being first place or wild cards too. It's still pretty crowded, Pags. So there is a shot that you may not make it in the playoffs still.
Yeah, I ain't worried about that. That's you saying that. Just because the Yankees ain't going to make the playoffs doesn't mean the Phillies aren't.
I don't care about
the AL.
The Yankees are going to make the playoffs.
I don't care about the Yankees making the playoffs. I'm talking about the Phillies. Right now,
I'm telling you, the Phillies are making the playoffs. There's nobody strong enough in the NL that are going to be able to overtake them from getting at least a third wild card.
Well, we'll see. I'm saying it's crowded.
Miami's starting to trail off. I think what have they lost? They lost 3 or 4 to us, and I think they lost the last 2 series as well. So they're not doing so hot right now.
5-5 in their last 10, but they were bad before that. Yeah.
Right. So the Braves are running away with that. So it's going to be either the Marlins. Like I said, the Marlins, as the season goes on, they start to trail off. The Mets were sellers, so they're no longer even in the conversation. Cincinnati is not used to making these types of runs and are going to have to go on a run to be able to get to where they got to get to. I don't think that they have it in them, or Milwaukee isn't going to have it in them to keep it in first place. So it's only going to be one team out of that division.
Agreed.
Then you got San Francisco, and you got San Francisco and the Dodgers.
And in Arizona are still alive. They're only
San Diego's going to make a run when all is said and done.
Only 4 games back of the wild card right now.
Yeah, San Diego's going to make a big run. If you ask me my opinion, I think they're going to get to the playoffs. San Diego, they're going to go on a run and get in.
We'll see. That'd be interesting because that's kind of what they did last year. Made the run towards the end of the year. And that's what I think good players do. When they figure out that it's playoff time, they are able to turn it up. And that's what the Padres did last year. That's what the Phillies did last year. And nobody could touch them in the playoffs. So I kind of think similar situation is going to occur this year. I think the Phillies have just too much talent not to make the playoffs. And I don't think that, like I said, I don't think the Marlins are good enough to keep everything going. I'm not sure if it's Milwaukee or if it's the Reds that are going to trail off.
Right.
And then I think, again, the same thing with San Francisco. Like, I'm like, that manager over there, I mean, he was a Phillies manager for a little while, but I just don't think he's got it in him to do a run when they got people charging. Is he able to?
Bruce Bochy. Well, they
Sure.
won 107 games 2 years ago. Keep that in mind. And last year, I think they were 581 and 81. But there's a history based on what they did a couple of years ago. So maybe they can keep it going.
Folks, in
Maybe.
about 30 seconds, we got Abraham Gonzalez coming up to join us. We're going to talk a little bit about boxing. We'll keep the Philly sports guys. Still want to get with him about Philadelphia, the Eagles a little bit. So we'll keep the Philly guy. I know Keith's got to go. Keith, I want to thank you for coming in as you always do on Friday and Sunday with all your great expectations of the Yankees. It makes me feel really good. So Keith Engle, TGI Sports, folks, check out his site, and we'll talk to you Sunday. Keith, have a good one.
Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.
So there you go. Keith is out, and we'll bring. Maybe Keith doesn't want to leave. Keith, you got to go. All right, Keith is out, and we'll bring up Abraham Gonzalez. Abraham Gonzalez, of course. Keith just wants to stay.
Yeah, get him out of here. Now you wait for him.
I'll try. So anyway,
what the heck?
I don't know. Keith is he refuses to leave. Anyway, we've got Abraham, and Abraham, stick with us. I just want to get through some Eagles news with the Pags. Of course, the Eagles are the biggest favorite for the NFC to get to the Super Bowl. Pretty much the same team as they were last year, and 1 year more experience. So they're going to be tough to beat out. Third practice working between the 20s. Pags, I was watching a little bit about that yesterday, simulating game. The offense making some big plays, the defense making some big plays. And when you play against a number one, number two defense as an offense, that makes you better and vice versa. So what are your thoughts, Pags? I mean, we got Dallas, you got the Giants in the NFC East that will compete with you guys a little bit, and probably San Francisco. Detroit, maybe. So what do you think, Pags, this year?
I still got us going 12-5 and going to the Super Bowl.
Okay. All right.
Short of injuries. Like there's two injuries that the Eagles cannot withstand, and that is Jalen Hurts or A.J. Brown. The offense changed tremendously if either one of those two get hurt. And that's, as long as those two are healthy throughout the season, we will be 12-5 and make it back to the Super Bowl.
Okay. I don't know, Pags. Jim seems pretty confident his Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl. And a lot of people are saying with a healthy Brock Purdy, the Eagles may get knocked out too.
Yeah, okay. That's what I got to say about that. Yeah, first off, what is Jim going to say? He's on the payroll. So it's, he's got to say, that the Cowboys. I told you guys, and usually my predictions are right. I said that the Cowboys are going to go through an implosion this year, a major implosion. I still believe that. That there's nothing that has happened up to this point that has changed my mind about that. And I think that you're going to see the last days of McCarthy as a coach.
It's quite possible. I mean, Dak Prescott was sat out of practice for throwing too many interceptions. I did watch that tape. So we'll see what happens. I mean, there's a lot on the line. McCarthy, Dak, he hasn't got his big contract that he wanted or that he's wanting to do. So, I mean, there is a lot of things that are happening in Dallas. Zach Martin sitting out. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, Bags. You might be right. So then what do you think the championship is? You and the 49ers again?
To be honest, I think that the 49ers aren't as good as they think they are. I wouldn't be surprised to see Detroit, although that would really be a big, big step for them. There's going to be a surprise somewhere. There's going to be a surprise. And I don't know where that surprise is. It could even be the Giants, having the right seed at the right time, you know what I mean? And being able to get to that by having like a similar path to the Eagles last year with like a weaker playoff teams.
Okay.
But,
all right.
I mean, anything is possible. But I think that who the Eagles are going to face in the NFC Championship game is not going to be a traditional name that we're hearing.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Abraham, I never asked you about football. What's your favorite football team and why, Abraham?
I'm a Giants guy. I'm from the Bronx,
There you go.
homegrown. So I'm a Giants guy.
All right, there you go. Yeah,
Another crier. I didn't bring enough tissues today.
Oh Lord. So let's get to some boxing with Abraham. That's why we got him in here. Abraham, of course, you helped preview the fight with Crawford and Spence. I think you thought it was going to be a better fight than it was. I don't want to toot my own horn, but of course I called Crawford 8th round knockout. It was a 9th round. And was it a disappointing fight to you? I mean, a lot of people say it was still an exciting fight because they were going at it, but was it disappointing how it went for you?
I think in the moment it wasn't, because everyone was at the edge of their seat waiting for something to happen. But you saw some of that high level stuff early on, as far as the feints, the movement, the positioning. So it wasn't. Now looking back and maybe taking a step back and looking at it a second time, maybe it might be a little disappointing, but at the moment I don't think it was, because the anticipation and the excitement was so high.
What are your thoughts on what Crawford does next? Crawford, he's got a supposedly mandatory match with Boots Ennis that they're saying they're demanding he does. The rematch with Spence, I don't know if Spence signed it or not yet, or Crawford signed it, or whatever's got to be done there. And he's still got options of whether to go up and fight somebody else. What do you think Crawford's going to do?
It's tough to say. It's really on Spence, what Spence wants to do next, because he has 30 days from the fight to decide whether he wants to activate that rematch clause or not. And so depending on what Spence wants to do, it will trigger what happens next. Crawford has a few mandatories, but I think the one that's next is the WBA one against Stanionis, since he had to step aside a couple times to allow Spence to do what he was going to do. So it'll be interesting to see what happens then. But I would have to say that Spence is going to activate the rematch clause. There was some reports that went out there yesterday that both men are clearing at least $20 million. It's hard not to do it again when you make that much money. Obviously, they won't make that much the second time around, but if they make half, that'll be more than what they'll get paid for anybody else. So I think that they do it again. And then Crawford, they'll do it at 154, right? And I think Crawford stays at 154. And I'm really interested in seeing who he fights after. I think it's going to be a Tim Tszyu. And or if Jamel Charlo is available during that time. I know he really wants the Charlo fight, but I feel like Charlo is talking a good game, but he's going to settle in at 160 when everything's all said and done after the Canelo fight. But I think a Crawford-Tim Tszyu fight in Australia is huge. It's a mega event over there. Really interesting fight. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I think that the next thing is Crawford-Spence 2, December, January timeframe.
Errol Spence really would be a fool if he didn't activate the rematch clause. He doesn't necessarily have to fight it. If people don't want to see the rematch, if the PBC isn't interested, Showtime isn't interested, they'll have to pay Errol Spence a step-aside fee to waive his rights to the rematch. So he doesn't get $20 million. Let's say he wants to retire. He could pick up, let's say, $5 million to forego the whole thing. The question with Terence Crawford is this. Has he taken his career to another level? Meaning, is he now an attraction in itself? Is he the type of fighter that everyone wants to fight because it means big money for them? If Jamel Charlo beats Canelo Alvarez, it's going to make a Terence Crawford match very hard to make, because Jamel Charlo's going to feel he's the guy. He deserves a little more money than Terence Crawford. And we're going to get a repeat of the Spence-Crawford negotiations. And I want to make something clear. Crawford and Spence, especially Spence, is being given a ton of credit for making this fight happen. It's good that they eventually fought. They deserve some credit. But let's be honest about it. Errol Spence delayed this fight for the longest time. saying, I have 3 belts, so I deserve more money. He was talking at one point about a 70-30 split in his favor. He wasn't anxious to make it happen, and last Saturday night we saw why.
Well, I mean, what does Spence do? I mean, does Spence stay down at that fight at that level? Does he move up also? He's a good sized guy too. He could go up at 154.
He has to go up to 154.
Right.
It's going to happen.
Right, but I mean, even if he doesn't fight Crawford, he's still got options there also. And if it's not Crawford, who would Spence fight at that higher level? The same guys?
Well, he's going to have to not start from scratch, but he's going to have to build his way up again at 154. I don't see him getting an immediate title shot. He has no titles now, so he'll have to, maybe fight a Castaño, or there's the Towering Inferno.
Abraham, you know boxing well, Abraham. You don't have to earn anything to get title shots. If Crawford doesn't fight Tim Tszyu, come on, they would make a nice offer for Spence to go to Australia to fight Tim Tszyu, and it's a very winnable fight for Tim Tszyu at this point. Yeah, I mean, that would be the fight if, let's say, Crawford fought someone else.
Yeah, I just don't see them throwing Spence into the mix like that from the first fight into 154. I see him taking, a fight before something like a Tim Tszyu or anything like that at 154 if he doesn't fight Crawford.
Right, but with what's left for Errol Spence, there are not going to be a lot of fights left in his career. I'm sure he's thinking to make the most money, the biggest fight, and to get out. I mean, there's too much of an ego involved to go on any type of rebuild. Let me ask you this. Based on last Saturday night, let's say they do have to rematch at 154, which is a distinct possibility. Can Errol Spence do better than he did?
Honestly, the Spence that I saw on Saturday night, man, let me take a step back. The Crawford that I saw Saturday night, I think he finishes them sooner. And now that he knows what Spence has to offer and has felt his power, I think he goes in there and tries to go for the stoppage much sooner than last weekend. He said it himself that once he felt his power, he said, that's it. And then went after him. So I think that even at 154, even at the higher weight, I think Crawford goes after him sooner and maybe gets the stoppage sooner. I don't think that the weight is going to make the difference. Spence looks slow, and Crawford is just too quick on the trigger for Spence's style.
Now, let's go a step further. I had a big debate with my partner, Frank Laterzo, on our podcast, Gloved Fist. To me, the dream match would be if Canelo beats Jermell Charlo, him against Terence Crawford. It could be whatever catch weight. Crawford would probably come in at about 155, 156, not having to make weight. Canelo isn't a big super middleweight. He'd probably come in 167. So what if Crawford gives away 12, 13 pounds? They did it all the time back in the day, but my partner Frank Laterzo says it's too much of a gimmick fight. I say if they fought, Terence Crawford giving away the weight beats Canelo.
Oh, I don't know. I know that they brought up Canelo as recent as yesterday to Crawford, and he kind of dismissed that right away. He was on Hot 97 there in New York, talking to Ebro in the morning, and he kind of dismissed it, saying, that he's too big. He said, Canelo fights at 168 plus, and he just kind of dismissed the whole Canelo conversation. So I don't see that particularly happening. Maybe in another year or two, when Crawford gets a little bigger and and Canelo slows down even more, maybe he does that once he fills into 154, but not right away. I don't see that happening right away.
So, what is the biggest boxers and the biggest boxing, the biggest boxing matches coming up in the near future here, Abraham, that you're interested in, that you want to see, that maybe will change change the rankings. Is there any big fights coming up that you're interested in?
Well, I mean, it seems like the heavyweights are dancing around, right? So the heavyweight fights that we want to see aren't happening, and so can't talk about that. I think the only other fight right now is, Jermell Charlo versus Canelo Alvarez. That's scheduled, right? There's some other discussions for fights for the last quarter of the year, but until those get made, I don't really want to talk about something that is in discussions. But I think Canelo versus Charlo is the biggest fight that I'm looking forward to. A real interesting one, because I don't necessarily dismiss Jermell Charlo right away. He's a hell of a fighter, a quick fighter, and he might be catching Canelo at the right time.
So
Canelo couldn't stop John Royd in his last fight, Mexico City over there. I've been saying Canelo has been gently declining for a while. He's not the fighter he was a few years ago. He's still pretty good, formidable, but sometimes you could see that slight slippage in the fight, and I've been seeing it in Canelo.
Is there any young boxers that you're looking at coming up? I know there's one out of Philly that's looking pretty good. The Philly Sport.
Yes.
Well,
he's not an up and comer exactly, Boots Ennis. He's gotten to a certain status now, a high level. So I wouldn't call him an up and comer. Let me just detour a little to Abraham. I got a cover fight for my publication. They asked me yesterday, and they nearly apologized to me, telling me I don't have to do it if I don't want to. Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. What do I make out of it? I haven't been paying attention, Abraham. Help me out with my free fight stuff. I mean, I've been ignoring it completely. Now I got to write about it, do a report. They had that little brawl, their security teams yesterday at the press conference. I mean, what are we to make out of that? So this fight.
It's interesting, right? Initially, when it was announced, there was a heavy buzz about the fight. Then the buzz kind of died down a little bit when Spence Crawford came up. And Jake Paul, very, very smart businessman and knows the social media game. They probably figured, well, let's not invest too much money on the build-up before the Crawford fight, because it's going to get wasted and lost into that main event. So what they did was they waited until that fight was over. Now fight week came a little late, but they turned, all their power and muscle to the fight. And now we got a fight that everybody's talking about. And Jack, they got you reporting on it. And that's just the way it goes with these events. Now, starting today and tomorrow is going to be one of the most talked about things on social media. So if we say Jake Paul a few times, hey, Mac, your show is going to be on the Google searches out there for this fight. Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz, what's going to happen? I think Jake Paul's going to land the right hand and knock Nate Diaz flat out. It's going to be a video that's going to be circulating around social media, probably hit 4 or 5 million views, and we'll be talking about it for the next couple of days. I don't think Nate Diaz is a serious boxer. I mean, he's a little older now. I think he knows what it is as far as getting, the last big check in his career. He'll come out hard, and Paul's going to defend and let him kind of, go through his motions. But then come the second, third round, Paul's going to light him up. And then you're going to see Nate Diaz staring at the lights in the American Airlines Arena in Dallas, Texas.
If Jake Paul continued on and he was serious about his career, he's really an entertainer who boxes, okay? But if he was serious about being a boxer within the trade, less of an entertainer, what is his potential? Good 8-round fighter? Could he conceivably be a top 20 in the division on merit ever? Or is that so far-fetched?
I don't even think that he wants to do that realistically. I don't think he wants to do that. He's going to fight Nate Diaz, then he's going to fight KSI, make a bunch of money, and then he's going to transition into being a promoter and focus on the fighters that he has. The Amanda Serrano, that kid actor that is that he just signed from the Stallone movie. He's got the other kid from Southern California, I believe it is, that's under his belt. So he's going to focus on being a promoter and then transition into that. And then also he's got the PFL obligations that he's got to fulfill as well. So, these gimmicky type of shows, they're going to continue. And then he'll fulfill his obligations in the PFL, make some more money there, and then, focus on being a promoter.
I mean, is that where boxing has come to now? Where this is what we're going to see more of this kind of stuff than the real boxers fighting each other? What is boxing going to do about this? Is this going to make fighters make the fights they should be making? The Crawfords and the Spences, or are they just going to let this continue to take over the boxing? Abraham?
I think it just comes in waves. It comes in waves. I think during the year that we lost in COVID, it kind of taught us that, nothing is guaranteed, and, we have to be able to make, happen as much as we can right now, because we can run into, the next thing later on. And losing that year kind of forced everybody to look at their situation and say, you know what, we need to make these fights happen so we can make the most money now. Because we could run into another situation later on. I don't foresee boxing turning into these sideshows. Sideshows are always going to be around, in my opinion. I think Jake Paul will go away eventually in the next 2 years, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Well, Tyson Fury, look what he's doing in his next fight. We're talking about sideshows.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, they got. Yeah, I was going to say that was the first question I was going to ask, and I didn't know if you guys touched on it while I was on the phone. That they obviously Tyson is going to be on the opposite corner against Tyson Fury, which is I thought was a little bit of a thing. My question to you, Abraham, and I asked Jack a little bit ago, a couple of days ago, what do you think boxing needs? Like, I feel like, me personally, I feel like boxing needs a well-spoken, ridiculously talented person to be able to go out there and kind of have like a Muhammad Ali type of presence to be able to put boxing back on the map. You had this great fight that happened this past weekend, and everybody's it's like Hagler Hearns, in 2023. And I tell you, I remember Hagler Hearns. I remember those guys, and they were like famous beyond famous at that time. And you have these guys who I didn't even know who they were.
Yeah. So the problem is activity. So you need what you just mentioned, but you also need fighters to be active. A lot of these guys are only fighting once a year. That's not going to cut it. They fight once a year, and then you don't hear from them until the next fight. I don't think we need one person that represents the sport. I think we need a bunch of people that represent the sport, because one person is just not going to cut it. They're not fighting enough for one person to carry it. Yes, Canelo has been carrying it for a while, but really he's been more so on the Latin side, on Latin media side, than on the American side, right? So do we have like an American person out there? Not really. I mean, the closest thing as far as popularity, and don't jump on me when I say this, is gonna be the Ryan Garcias and Gervonta Davis. Those are the most popular guys in the sport. And even then, they fought in April, and neither one of them is probably gonna fight for the rest of the year. Maybe
Tank Davis was in jail, so he kind of had a reason he couldn't be, active. But one of Pax's guys from Philadelphia fought, since the last time he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, Stephen Fulton. He got stopped in the 8th round by Naoya Inoue, and for a few days at least, Inoue was considered pound for pound. It was up to Terrence Crawford or really to regain that position. A few days later, Crawford did restore order as far as him being number one pound for pound. But it was quite a performance by Inoue. But when Pax mentions certain name fighters. His own city of Philadelphia didn't get behind Stephen Fulton, who's a darn good fighter despite the loss.
Yeah, that's a shame that didn't happen. He even said that he got more press for him losing from the city of Philadelphia than him going into it. But again, activity matters, right? These guys disappear during these inactivity periods, and it's like you have to be out there. You have to be in the public eye, whether that's social media, whatever the case may be, if you want to be the man. You have to be out there, especially like if you don't have the background personality of a Gervonta Davis that kind of draws you in, the everything around it and stuff. So you just have to be out there and you have to be active.
And I agree with that. Like, I feel like he should have, before that fight with Inoue, he should have thrown out the first pitch at a Phillies game. He should have been on the morning shows. There could have been a lot of things that his promoter did not do. Like, you need to, ultimately, I know you're supposed to be very focused, but you should have somebody on your staff putting Instagram posts and TikTok posts on your training, every day. Get known out there. And I feel like the reason why Jake Paul is even a known entity in boxing is because he's doing all of those things. That's it. If Jake Paul wasn't a YouTuber, there would be no interest in him either. So, and the fact, because he's fighting against cupcakes in comparison to him. You know what I mean? He's never going to fight a real boxer because he never wants to lose. It's the same thing with me. If you got me in the boxing ring, I'm going to fight against a 12-year-old because I want to make sure I win. You know what I mean? Because the Philly sports guy can't lose.
Yeah,
and I'm saying that facetiously, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because I can't lose.
I want to go over a couple of fights, though, with Abraham. Oscar Valdez and Manuel Navarrete. Navarrete's one of my favorites. Keeps punching. Who you pick to win that fight?
I'm gonna go with Navarrete because his style is just hard to figure out, and I think Oscar Valdez is gonna get clipped with one of those random Navarrete punches.
You think he'll stop him? I'm going with Navarrete by decision, but it's a terrific matchup. Anthony Joshua, Dillian White. Pressure's on Anthony Joshua to do something special. If he wins by decision, forget about him. To me, he's done, basically, even though he'll still be an attraction. But he's got to stop Dillian White, who's no longer durable, and he's got to do it really within 10 rounds at the very least. What do you make out of that fight?
I spoke to Anthony Joshua on Wednesday. He looked super relaxed, and I think that's dangerous for Dillian White. I think he's going to stop him around the 6th round.
Interesting.
He needs that. He kind of needs that statement fight. And then what happens with, of course, Alexander Usyk over Daniel Dubois? Do you see any way Usyk could maybe get upset in that fight?
I don't see it. Daniel Dubois is too robotic. Usyk is too much of a boxer, and he's gonna box his way to a easy decision.
Well, there you go. Well, guys, there's one thing I've always said when we get in the discussion of boxing, they should have, like they do in the UFC, one president, spokesperson that's over all the promoters, over all the everything. There should be somebody like that who's pumping boxing constantly, and I think boxing would really get a kick in the butt from that. So, just my opinion.
Yeah, I don't vent about stuff like that anymore, Matt, because it's never going to happen. Just like I spoke in front of a veterans boxing group years ago, and I told them, stop all the talk about boxers getting a pension. It's not going to happen. You can read articles from 70 years ago. It's unfortunate, but it's not going to happen. Sometimes you have to talk in reality, and this is with the sport. For the Spence Crawford fight, what slipped under the radar completely. One of the judges, David Sutherland, was a judge in the George Kambosos Maxi Hughes fight. He called it a draw, which was a bad scorecard, but not ridiculous. Just he was off. But you don't get rewarded with the Super Bowl of fights. after a card like that, a week later. So, but that's boxing.
I agree. I agree.
Hey, Jack, I just want to say real quick, California did start a boxing pension program.
There you go.
Everyone's starting it. Listen, you could have a medical fund, this and that. You want it to happen. You want it to become a reality, and it hurts for me to say it. It really hurts a lot. But can it really become a reality? Because the same conversation's been going on for 75 years or more.
Yeah.
So,
Well, folks,
yeah.
I want to thank you for joining us today. Thanks to Pags for coming in at the end of the show with us. Abraham, great having you on. Less technical difficulties today, so folks could really hear you. So thanks for coming on. Folks, thanks for joining us, all the likes and loves and views. And we'll see you tomorrow on the Saturday Debate Show. Hopefully Pags joins us with Doc, and we'll have some fun there. And, of course, we have the big football show starting up on Sunday, which I know is a favorite out there. So for Mac, Jack, Philly sports guy, Abraham Gonzalez, have a great Friday and be careful out there.